We all love a nice, clean ending where everyone goes riding off into the sunset to happily live out the rest of their days, but we don't always get one. Sometimes things just don't pan out that way, and what we're left with instead is games that hammer their brutality and unrelenting cruelty home, with even crueler endings that devastate us to our very core. In this feature, we'll be taking a look at 15 such instances. It goes without saying, but owing to this feature's nature, there will be major spoilers ahead for every game we speak about. So if you see us beginning to talk about a game you'd rather not have spoiled for you, go ahead and skip to the next entry. Persona 3. Persona 3's ending is an unpleasant one in a slightly different way. While we do end up managing to beat the larger threat and save the world and all that, it ends up extracting a heavy toll. The main protagonist ends up sacrificing himself to keep Nick sealed away. It's a much more personal loss, and sure, in the grand scheme of things, the good outweighs the bad, but it still hits you like a ton of bricks. Infamous 2. Infamous 2 is one of those games where no matter which ending you get, chances are you're not going to be happy with what happens. Either Cole ends up dead in his sacrifice to stop the beast, or Cole sides with the beast, rampages through the city, killing countless innocents and also killing his former friends, LaRoche, and the militia. Red Dead Redemption 2. Regardless of whether you play with high honor or low, the larger beats of Red Dead Redemption 2's climax are depressing as hell. Arthur dies no matter what you do, alone and tortured by his disease. The fabric of the gang is ripped apart, owing to the double whammy of Dutch's unraveling and Micah's betrayal. And sure, John gets to make it out alive and spend a good few years with his family, and Micah ultimately gets what's coming to him, but knowing how John's story unravels in the future, we can't very well call it a happy ending for him either. Mass Effect 3. Sure, Mass Effect 3's ending was devastating and catastrophic in other ways as well, but let's just look at its actual contents for now, because by the time the trilogy ends, the entire galaxy is in absolute terrible state. In the majority of the endings, Shepard is dead, and regardless of which ending you choose, the fact of the matter remains that millions and millions have died at the hands of the Reapers, some of which were characters we'd grown very familiar with throughout the course of the trilogy. Middle-earth: Shadow of War. Things were never going to end well for Talion. We figured as much even when we first played Shadow of Mordor. Its sequel, Shadow of War, just confirmed those suspicions. Celebrimbor's true intentions are brought to light, and, surprise to no one, Talion's absolute failure to resist the Ring of Power's corruption is heartbreaking, but something we could have seen coming, with his eventual transformation into a Nazgul just serving as icing on this depressing cake. Sure, he gets to lay down his arms in the afterlife and everything. Dark Souls. Dark Souls isn't the cheeriest of games out there, so finding it on a list such as this one isn't all that surprising. As our first nightmarish adventure comes to an end, we're given a choice. We can either link the flames and artificially preserve the Age of Fire, which is what's been causing the plague of the undead curse, or we can extinguish those flames and plunge the world into the Age of Dark, which is about as cheerful as it sounds. KILLZONE 2. You'd think that killing Visari, the Hitler to Helghast Nazis, might be the ultimate win for us in Killzone, but it turns out to be quite the opposite, because Visari's death actually ends up uniting and reinvigorating the Helghast forces, who fight with much greater ferocity and focus than ever before. The remainder of the ISA forces now remain trapped on the dying planet, while a recharged Helghast offensive prepares to hunt down the stragglers. Batman: The Enemy Within. Telltale's second Batman season was a very different take on the Joker-Batman relationship that we've all grown so accustomed to over the years, and it delivered some heavy, heavy blows. Depending on how you played, things might have turned out alright for you, but then again, maybe not. Because of your choices as Batman, in the Joker you may have created a resentful, twisted, homicidal maniac, while having to choose between donning the cape and keeping Bruce Wayne's surrogate father Alfred around right at the end is also a devilishly difficult choice. The Walking Dead Season 1. None of us expected a game such as The Walking Dead to have anything close to a happy ending, but none of us were prepared back in 2012 to be an emotional wreck that the first season's ending turned us into. Lee dies no matter what you do, leaving Clementine alone and helpless, while even the choice that we do get is a devastating one. Make Clementine, an innocent and little child, shoot the man who's been like her father to put him out of his misery, or refuse to do so but leave him to a fate much worse than death. It's a difficult choice to make either way. Resistance 2. Resistance 2's ending is just a major downer no matter how you look at it. Tremendous losses are sustained both in small and large scale. For the latter, the Chimera invade the Midwest, wiping out a whopping 80 million survivors and leaving little more than a handful to escape with their lives. On a smaller scale, but one that affects us as an audience much more, Nathan Hale, who's been our leading man for 2 full games by this point, succumbs to the Chimera infection and is executed by a point-blank shot to the head by Capelli. A 1-2 gut punch of unfortunate turns. Spec Ops: The Line. You knew this one was coming. Spec Ops: The Line is the poster boy for depressing and devastating video game endings, partly because it's so damn good at delivering them. No matter which of its endings you get, things are absolutely terrible. Either dead or crazed, Walker seems like he's beyond salvation, while the wreckage he's unleashed knowingly or otherwise looms large over the entire game's story as well. Star Wars: The Force Unleashed. There are 2 possible endings players can get in The Force Unleashed, and while one of them is, all things considered, a pretty positive one, that's not the one we're speaking about here. We're speaking about the bad ending, which sees Starkiller giving in to the powers of the dark side. He kills Vader and tries to kill the Emperor, but is swiftly crushed underneath an entire ship. His fate afterwards is even worse, with him basically being forced to serve as the Emperor's assassin, knowing full well that the Emperor is constantly looking for someone to replace him with and discard him the way he did Vader. A Way Out. A Way Out does an absolutely incredible job of building up 2 excellent characters in Leo and Vincent, and making us come to care about them and their growing and deepening friendship. The dynamic between the 2 is sold extremely effectively, so seeing it ripped apart at the end is a heart-wrenching one to say the least. One way or another, one of the 2 dies at the hands of the other in an emotional moment where the 2 share one final moment of friendship before one of them succumbs to the gunshot dealt to them by the other. It's a tragic ending and one that we won't be forgetting anytime soon. Half-Life 2 Episode 2. The mother of devastating and catastrophic endings, not particularly because of anything that happens in it, but mostly because we might not ever know how it all resolves. But seriously though, even the ending by itself is a pretty big downer, as Alex clutches the dead body of her father and is sobbing away. What happens next with the Combine or the Advisors or a million other things that we've been asking about obsessively for years? Well, we'll find out when Half-Life 3 launches like 50 years from now. Command & Conquer: Red Alert. Command & Conquer: Red Alert could end one of 2 ways, with victory for either the Soviets or the Allied forces. The former saw the player becoming the premier of the Soviets, who rule over all of Europe with an iron grip, except the player is little more than a puppet, and the Soviets are only interested in operating from these shadows and extending their rule even further. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.